Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers. We're here to preview the Seahawks at Los Angeles Chargers game this coming Sunday. Welcome in, Keith.
Yeah, it's this is kind of a big game for Seattle because the Chargers are 4-2. They're a good team. They are in first place in their division, and the Seahawks are
second place.
Well, they're tied for first.
All right, technically, yeah.
But this is a team that is expected to be competitive in the playoffs and push Kansas City and Buffalo, and make those teams earn their shot at a Super Bowl. And if Seattle wants to be considered a contender here and someone who can do something in the playoffs, this is a team you got to judge yourself against. They've done a good job the last few weeks of really moving the ball and doing some stuff offensively. Last week the defense really came together, and if last week was an aberration, I think it'll show this week. But if it wasn't, if this team is has legitimately turned a corner, it could very easily show up here in this game.
Yeah, interesting. The Chargers started slow. I think they were 1-2 out of the gate. They won their last three. I think everybody heard about or watched that Monday night game against the Denver Broncos, where they kind of won that thing in the end on a field goal. And it's interesting because expectations were high for the Chargers this year. They went into that thing last year with the Raiders and lost that game at the very end of the year. And the Raiders went into the playoffs with Derek Carr, and Justin Herbert went home. Everyone thought it was going to be kind of the opposite way. They just weren't quite there yet, but they rebuilt their roster a little bit, brought in Khalil Mack in free agency, let Nuasu go instead. And but their defense is kind of middling still. So that one move really didn't help them. They also brought in J.C. Jackson, the cornerback, paid him a league-leading salary. But he's been completely ineffective. In fact, I think the passer rating allowed against him this year is 155.8, the second worst.
155 it's 158.3. I was like, isn't that the highest
close.
possible?
It's darn close to allowing pretty much everything that's been thrown his way to be caught. And so he just hasn't adjusted yet. He came in after ankle surgery late in the offseason and missed the first two games. So he's been kind of limping back a little bit. But this is one of those test games for the Seahawks at 3-3, first place in the NFC West. The team kind of came alive last week on the defensive side of the ball for the first time. I thought this season so far, the offense has kind of clearly been consistent for the most part the last couple games, and for the better part of the season. Geno Smith has turned out to be one of the best quarterbacks statistically in the NFL so far this year, and they look to build on that in this game on the offensive side, and I think they can do that against this Charger defense. The real thing to watch, and there's a few things to watch on the offensive side as well, but the real thing I think to watch, Keith, is what can they duplicate out of that Cardinals game going forward, scheme-wise and personnel-wise, that they can take to this team, a very aggressive offense, a team that's going to throw the ball about 40, 45 times a game with Justin Herbert. They're going to run maybe Eckler out there a dozen times or so and hope to pick up 65 to 85 yards. That's about what they average per game, but they're averaging almost 275 yards passing per game. Seventh ranked offense coming in.
And that's been without their best weapon for most of the season too. Keenan Allen's been out for a big chunk here, and it showed in this offense, and he's been practicing this week. He's been limited in practice, but he's been practicing. Really good chance that he is going to play In fact, if I was a Seahawks, I'd be counting on it because
Mhm.
he is practicing. So, and that really boosts that offense because he's a legit number one when healthy. His problem has been that he isn't healthy very often. But he's a tough guy to cover, and so he'll draw Tariq Woolen, and then it'll be up to Mike Williams. Then
I like
becomes
that matchup.
Mike Williams then becomes the guy that looks to benefit by not having Tariq Woolen on him all game.
Well, I'm gonna challenge you on that just a little bit, and I'm gonna then the reason I can say that is because I cheated a little bit. I think Kobe Bryant's gonna be matched up on Keenan Allen more, if Keenan Allen plays, at least according to Kobe Bryant. He came on and had a little press conference and he talked about Keenan Allen playing out of the slot quite a bit, and so he was looking forward to that matchup. But that doesn't mean he's not going to be on the outside and Tariq's going to cover him. But I think that Mike Williams is probably going to get Tariq more often. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, it might be. I would just looking at this matchup, I'd want Woolen on Allen because Allen's the better receiver. He's the more complete guy. He does everything you could want a receiver to do. And I would want your best corner on him. Not that, I mean, Mike Williams is a good player, but he's not Keenan Allen. He's, well,
let me ask you this:
that next tier.
Are the Seahawks doing what they used to do with Sherman early in Sherman's career and just playing him on one side, and whoever's lined up against him, that's the guy?
They've done a little of both. Woolen followed Sutton around in the first week. And then in other games, they've just gone with sides. And so this coaching staff has been more adaptive and willing to, okay, if we need Woolen on a guy, we can do that. Or if we feel that we don't have to make that switch, we can leave them in their positions and let just kind of let the defense do its thing. So it's interesting. And I don't know what the game plan will be here, but I would still prefer to have Tariq Woolen on Keenan Allen.
I'm kind of excited, actually. I think Woolen's got a really good shot at getting his 5th interception in 5 consecutive games because Justin Herbert takes some shots and he takes some chances and he kind of threads the needle a little bit. And Woolen has shown himself to be a very competent corner early on in his career and able to bait quarterback throws into certain situations and so forth. I'm so excited to kind of watch this thing because I think it's really a key to the defense here as far as being able to generate some turnovers against this team, get their offense off the field. I think as we've seen, and we talked about tempering our expectations a little bit on this defense and what we saw against the Cardinals. While yes, we can duplicate scheme and so forth, we're going against a much more competent offense, well-rounded offense, an offense that has Eckler in there receiving the ball out of the backfield, can also run. Hubert's great. They've got Keenan Allen. It's going to be, and Gerald Everett's out there, Mike Williams. Joshua Palmer probably is going to end up missing this game. He's got a concussion, but he led their team while Keenan Allen's been out in receptions. He had 9 last game against the Broncos. So they've got a really nice offense that's can hit you like fast and quick. And we'll see how the Seahawks respond to this. It'll be a very good test. What do you expect on the other side of the ball, Keith?
So with their defense, like it's weird because they spend a lot of money to bring in talent, and
they did.
Some of it has panned out, and some of it really hasn't. I like what Khalil Mack is still just kind of a special player, and he just blows up plays on his own, and he's a guy that you really have to account for. But at the same time, like as a defense, even with all the money they spent, they went from being awful to mediocre. There's not as much within that defense. They're just not dynamic. I mean, Derwin James is. Let's make sure that is included. He leads the team in tackles. He's very good. Khalil Mack is very good. But overall, when you start looking at it, there's not a lot of guys on here that really move the needle. Asante Samuel Jr. does at corner.
They're a very middling defense so
I think I've
far.
reached the end of the people who truly move the needle as far as, with all of that, with those three guys. And
Right.
so I struggle to think that they're have a defense that's good enough to compete. I expected them to.
I think that was the key to their offseason, was trying to get that defense right.
Yeah,
and I think they're still a player or two away. I mean, they're averaging 350 yards a game against them, 25.3 points. That's in the bottom third of the league. Passing yards 224, rushing yards allowed 125. That's ranked 23rd. Derwin James, you said, had 55 tackles. Khalil Mack's having a decent season with 7 tackles for loss and 6 sacks so far. Asante Samuel's their best corner.
I mean, it's never a good thing when a safety is leading your team in tackles.
That's true. That's so true.
Because that's Derwin James at 55 tackles is leading the team. Drew Tranquil at 50 is second, and then it's a big gap before you start running into the other linebackers at 25 and 23.
That's why I think the Seahawks offense is actually going to be able to continue to do what they've been doing in this game. Basically, and Ken Walker, I expect actually to have a really nice game here.
I would agree with
well
that.
over 100 yards. I think that might be one of the keys to the game is time of possession. And I still see it, in the Chargers' favor. But I think Seattle can keep that statistically close with Ken Walker, having 15, 17, 18 touches in this game, at least from the running back position, running the ball and over 100 yards. I think we can kind of control the clock a little bit. And Geno Smith is just a huge X factor in this game. He kind of came back to earth a little bit in this last game. He wasn't quite as dynamic. I still thought he played well, better maybe than his stats kind of showed. And in this game, I do expect him to be statistically right up there and making throws, completing balls down the field, setting up the offense really well, using the tight ends.
I didn't think Geno played poorly in this game, this last game. His stats didn't look as impressive. And then 6.4 yards per attempt is never going to impress anybody. But overall, the team was playing with a lead for most of the time, and they had a defense that was dominating the other team. They ran the ball a lot more than, a lot more plays than I think everyone's used to. And they went ahead and by doing that, they tried to run the clock and shorten the game and all of that. And for the most part, it worked. And so I'm just really not as concerned about it, because he just wasn't being asked to go out and dominate, because the defense finally stepped up. And I don't know. I don't consider this a bad game, despite the what's the stats say. You go watch the tape. He played pretty well in that game.
I agree. I think he did. Okay, so question for you: how do we attack San Diego? What do you expect out of our offensive players statistically? Like, who's the wide receiver between DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett that's going to have a better game in this game?
Ooh, I would say expect DK to do better in this game.
That's very, very interesting.
Because there's a couple of reasons. One, Lockett's got a tweaked hamstring. He's been limited in practice. He's still practicing. He's going to play. Don't think that he's not, but he's, been limited and all of that. But I also just think that you look at Asante Samuel Jr., and he is a guy he's a really good player and very sticky in coverage, but he's not a guy that's going to out jump the 6'3" DK Metcalf, right? Metcalf is going to be able to go up and win contested catches.
What about CJ Jackson in this matchup? He's been struggling, but man, he's still a good corner.
Is he? Are you sure?
Well, he was before he landed here. He had the ankle thing, and I think that's impacting him.
It is. It's really impacting his ability to cut. And so you watch, and what you see guys getting separation off their break. And as his ankle gets healthier, he'll go back to being more like what you saw in the past, I believe. Because I don't think this is a situation where a guy gets paid and then just stops trying type of situation. You know what I mean? Because that does happen.
Yeah, in fact, he had comments come out this week that he was going to be first in the building, last out this week, and studying and so forth. But I think some of that comes from just trying to be better on tape and know receivers' tendencies and so forth, so he can anticipate a little bit better, because he's not reacting as well as he's used to doing so.
He's also not on the injury report, and hasn't been. So yeah, he had that ankle, but the idea that he is
limited,
that he's like super limited in terms of his ankle, I think that's overblown.
Interesting. So let's turn it around on the defensive side, Keith. This week, it came out in both Pete Carroll's press conference and then press conferences of a couple of the players, specifically Poona Ford and Quentin Jefferson, came out and talked about scheme changes and tweaks. Can you allude to that a little bit and talk about what that means from last game to then carrying it over into the future?
They changed. So as we talk about a 3-4 and a 4-3 and all of that stuff often. And some of it is simply that they are trying to make this transition, but at the same time, they don't want to be completely one or the other. They want to be multiple. They want to be adjustable. They want to be able to do everything. And they've been trying to be a 3-4 defense without 3-4 personnel for the most part. And it hasn't worked. That's why they're just really bad against the run. And they've been just really bad on defense. And then they decided to, okay, if we're going to be multiple and we're going to be able to do all those things, let's try that again, and not just shoehorn in this 3-4 thing. And they went to instead of a 2-gap system, they went to a 1-gap system, where basically one of the two outside linebackers kind of declares as a defensive end each play based on offensive formation, and everyone attacks a gap rather than asking people to stack alignment and shed a block and that kind of stuff. So it's just a completely different way of assigning gaps to people against the run. And it just fits Seattle's personnel so much better to do a 1-gap thing. And we really saw a major improvement.
Is that taking chances with your gap assignments, especially on the end? Like, are they vulnerable to mistakes and big runs because of that?
I don't think so, because it's a 1-gap when you declare one of your outside linebackers a defensive end, essentially, in order to shift everyone's gap assignments, is what every 4-3 team does, right? So if you put Darrell Taylor's hand on the ground, then you're playing a 4-3. And you're just setting it up that way. And so that's essentially what they did in this. Was his hand wasn't on the ground, he was standing up to kind of mask what they were doing a little bit, but they were playing much more of a 4-3 in that game than a 3-4. And what that did is allowed Poona Ford, who's who's good at penetrating and getting into a gap, and Quentin Jefferson, who that's kind of his thing. He's a pass rusher for the most part. He's a guy that jumps into gaps and wreaks havoc, even if he isn't great against the run and all that kind of stuff. It allowed those guys to go do what they do best, and that's just beat guards into the hole.
So that seems like it's going to be important to carry that over into this game against Justin Hubert, a guy that's a pocket guy, can move around a little bit more, manipulating the pocket as opposed to taking off and running for yards. How important is it going to be to get pressure on this guy? We don't necessarily have to take him down and get sacks, but how important is it going to be for the Seahawks to disrupt timing, push the pocket around a little bit?
It's going to be huge. Justin Herbert is a guy that can eat you alive if you don't get pressure on him, because at some point you can't make your cornerbacks try and cover for 6-7 seconds. You've got to get in there. You've got to move him. You got to get the ball out of his hand before he wants to throw it. Because he's just too damn good to not pressure him. they've got to get pressure in this game
So,
if they're
in
going to
your
win.
opinion, who are the two most important defensive players in this game for the Seahawks?
Oh, that is a good question. I would say Nuwasu and you said defensive players, so then I'm going to go Woolen.
That's exactly the duo I thought you'd pick.
For
the reasons you just kind of stated.
And if you had said the two in the front seven, I would have said Puna Ford with Nuwasu, because I think Puna Ford as the interior guy that can get upfield and make the pocket smaller by really getting up in the quarterback's face. He's the guy that you're going to see do that.
There's no player that's happier than Puna Ford right now with that little tweak.
Quentin Jefferson
is
going to be right there with you.
Right.
Although, and honestly, like Shelby Harris can do both, but Shelby Harris I think he's going to show more statistically in this version of Seattle's scheme than in the other one. Like I said, he's good enough to do both. Al Woods is good enough to do both. But Al Woods is the biggest loser in this switch, because he was clearly the best.
True, but maybe our run stopping ability has increased, and he's the primary guy there.
Yeah.
Another underrated defensive player, I think, in this game is going to be Kobe Bryant, because Kobe's got a nose for the ball. I mean, he's got 4 forced fumbles, leads the NFL. This is going to be one of those games, if he is matched up against Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's coming back after a couple of weeks being off. And it's going to be really important to try to contain him. It is a hard matchup, but
that is a hard matchup for Kobe Bryant.
This is the 7th game. I watched the press conference with him, and he kind of came out and he was very humble guy, and he talked about the struggles early in the season that he had, and that he felt like sometimes he was overmatched. He was nervous. He didn't understand exactly where he was supposed to be in the scheme, and got cut out of position a few different times. And since then, his confidence levels continued to rise. They essentially benched him almost after the second game. And he kind of came back and played more. His snap count continued to come up. And then he started making plays and started affecting football games. And now he seems like he's just kind of got this confidence thing that he didn't have in the first 5 weeks. And I'm just really interested to kind of pay attention to this kid going forward. Jim Thorpe, winner last year, the best corner in college football. Had a little bit of a rocky start, but that diversity kind of builds camaraderie on the team, especially if he responds, and I think he is. And so
he's
just watching him going forward,
significantly better the last 3 games than he did earlier before he got benched. But I don't really think it's the benching that made any kind of difference, because it doesn't seem like he needed to be humbled. You ever listen to Kobe Bryant talk? He's absolutely correct. Not that guy. For him, it just is what you were saying. Like it's a chance for him to watch more film and figure out more what they're doing and work on communication and sit there and get an opportunity to talk with Diggs and be like, what am I not seeing? What am I not seeing that you are? And so that they can get on the right page. And I think it's really helped him. He has come around it's a huge change from early in the season. The reason why I worry about him with Keenan Allen, I don't think he has the speed to carry with Keenan Allen. That's the reason why Kobe Bryant, despite being the Jim Thorpe winner, wasn't a first round pick.
Well, he was an outside corner too until the after the preseason game with Pittsburgh. They told him that they were going to switch him to being a nickel guy.
Yeah.
So literally, he's played nickel 6 games in his life.
True.
And so he's still trying to figure it out. But that position requires more quickness than linear speed.
But when you're matched up against Keenan Allen, who's the best receiver on the other team, he may be starting in the slot. But those crossing routes require you to be able to carry him across the field with all that speed. And he'll also go deep.
It also requires massive amounts of recognition on routes and reading the quarterback and all those things. Those are things that Kobe Bryant is really good at already coming into the league.
Yes, absolutely. That's why I thought he was ready-made for the NFL. Him struggling early in the season was actually kind of a surprise.
I think he was just overthinking.
Because he's the guy, out of all the corners in the league, he was the guy who looked the most polished, the most ready to contribute on week one. Maybe not the highest ceiling because of that speed issue, but he looked like the guy that was most ready to start week one. And so his early season struggles were kind of surprising.
That's when they drafted Kobe Bryant before Tariq Woolen. While we were kind of frustrated, it made complete sense.
Because they needed a starter.
Exactly.
They felt they needed a starter.
Especially with Trey Brown not being able to come and work right away.
Yep. Trey Brown, I believe, is eligible to start practicing.
He is. He's real close.
If the team wanted to declare him, but he is not practicing this week.
I got an indicator from Pete Carroll in his press conference that he felt like he was a couple weeks away, which tells me that they're going to wait until after the bye week.
After the bye week, which is about the right time. Why rush him?
It'd be a 1 year then from his injury in November last year.
Why rush him back before the bye when you could give him 2 more weeks? To make that knee feel good. Right. And I mean, I'm saying that's going to be a lift. I mean, Trey Brown looked good last year. Yeah. I may have been surprised at how well because I wasn't expecting him to be good.
Right.
But that doesn't change the fact that he was good, because he was.
When you take a look at the injury report, Artie Burns is still on there. So with the groin, I'm not sure what's going on there. He came back briefly and then he must have re-injured it a little bit and is not practicing this week. And he's one of those guys I expected to come back and be available. So
one of the things that you mentioned in the last show, and I went looking for it, the reference to it, you said that Sidney Jones was on the trading block.
Yeah.
And it took me a bit to find that. It was kind of buried, but I still find that really fascinating, because you've got a guy like Artie Burns who's injured and not eligible, and so they're short corners because Burns is out. You'd think that Sidney Jones would be the next guy, or really you'd think he'd be starting at this point, but
which tells you how much they really like Mike Jackson. And a guy like Isaiah Dunn, and we don't know anything really about Isaiah Dunn. He hasn't made a lot of impact, hasn't played defensive snaps, but he's on the roster. He's there, and they're wanting to trade Sidney Jones, who was their best corner last year.
Yeah, I don't know if it has much to do with Isaiah Dunn as it is, trying to find room for Trey Brown, both on the roster and on the depth chart, and get him on the field. And
Sidney Jones may have a market,
he probably has. He has a bigger market than Artie Burns, because Artie Burns is hurt. But the fact that Tariq Woolen has not just jumped over everybody on the depth chart, but also then been really good after doing so, makes trading Sidney Jones a lot more palatable. And Mike Jackson struggled the first few weeks. He's been better the last couple.
Agreed.
He's a guy who's 6'4". Like the Seahawks come out with 2 6'4" corners.
I love it.
That is Pete Carroll ball right there.
Isn't that that's crazy? But then what do you do when Trey Brown comes back and Trey Brown's in the mix for the other?
I don't know.
The other.
I don't know what you do with that. I think you run a lot of time, and you have him and Bryant both in there.
You'd run a lot of dime and nickel in this game against Justin Hubert, no matter what.
You have
I would imagine
they're not a running team.
That Cody Barton is going to play like 15 snaps in this game.
I just don't see why you would you'd run Cody Barton out there, because the Chargers aren't going to run the ball a lot.
The only thing that makes me pause on that is
They're averaging
The
94 yards
only
a
thing that makes
game.
me pause on that, though, is Seattle is allowing 165 yards rushing per game. And it'd be wise for the Chargers to try to run the ball. Now, I know they don't have the traditional running backs to be able to do that, but it is what it is. And so one of the key players for me in this game is Jordan Brooks. The kid from the Broncos, linebacker Alex Singleton, had 21 combined tackles and 19 solo tackles against the Chargers in the Monday night game. And so Jordan Brooks is going to have an opportunity here to be a tackle machine in this game if they do decide to run. Now, granted, you can pass against the Seahawks as well, and Justin Herbert's their best player, and you're going to put the ball in his hands, especially down the stretch. So I see them running early, and if they're success, they'll keep running. And if they,
I don't expect them to run the ball much. I expect them to throw the ball, but a lot of their throws are going to be extensions of the run game. It's going to be
Eckler leads the NFL for running backs in reception.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of swing passes outside to Eckler. There's going to be screens. There's going to be that kind of stuff. And in that case, like
I wish we had KJ Wright for this game. He's built for this game.
Honestly, he really is. KJ Wright is one of the. I think he's the best linebacker I've ever seen at sniffing out a screen.
Yeah,
may not have been the most athletic guy, but
he was he was a tackle for loss machine on screens. I mean, he would just be crazy
because he was so good at this is going to be a screen. He gets out there. He doesn't get blocked by the lineman. He gets through that and makes the tackle, and he didn't miss tackle. He was phenomenal at that, and that's going to be something that the current brand of Seahawk defenders needs to be able to do. And some of that is going to be on him. Some of that's going to be on Numasu. Some of it's going to be on Boye Mafe.
So Eckler's got 41 receptions so far in 6 games.
That's incredible.
He's definitely a kid that you're going to watch in this game for sure.
On top of his running yard, he's still getting 7 receptions a game. That is a lot of touches.
And has 349 yards rushing too, which is equivalent to what Penny had before Penny got hurt. So, okay, so it's prediction time. What's going to happen in this game, Keith? I have no idea.
I don't know. Normally I come in knowing that you're going to ask for predictions, and I'm prepared, and I'm like, here's what I'm going with. But this is a game that I don't know what Seattle's defense is. Are they the awful defense that we saw for 5 weeks, or are they the team that was suddenly good a week ago after a scheme tweak? And I don't know which is real.
Well, I can tell you this. The Cardinals have an awful offense, and it's not even close to what the Chargers have.
Well, the Chargers are way better. I want to believe, though, that Seattle's defense last week was for real, and it's not just a factor of the Cardinals being bad. I don't know if that's true, but I want to believe it.
I do too. Yeah.
But I know the Chargers, even if Seattle's defense is much more of what we saw last week, Chargers offense is still going to move the ball at times. They're going to score some points. And I know that even though their defense is not the best, they still have guys like Khalil Mack who are just game wreckers. And he will destroy a couple of Seattle drives just by being himself. And so I'm really doubting whether, like, what would I know as far as all of this? And I really want to pick Seattle, but I don't think I can. I think I've got to pick the Chargers in this, and I think it's going to be a really fun game. And I want to say it's going to be like 27-30. And Justin Herbert's just too much at the end of the game.
Wow. This is one of those games. And to talk about the Cardinals thing and the defense and the transition and so forth, even if Seattle can duplicate the defense against Justin Herbert and the Chargers, I don't think that they're going to be necessarily as effective as they would be against the Cardinals, just because it's the NFL. They've had a week to look at some tape, and this would be the second game that Seattle's run out this kind of tweak, and they're still kind of getting used to that and feeling that out. And this is a much more dynamic offense with a lot more weapons and a better quarterback, I believe. Kyler Murray's his own unique player, no doubt about it. He's a special talent, but Justin Herbert's, top 5. And so there's that. However, Geno Smith is just a player playing out of his mind right now. I think that he, in this game, can continue the success and the trajectory that he's on in this season. Ken Walker, I think the Chargers are allowing 125 yards rushing per game. That's 23rd in the league. I believe that Ken Walker's going to get his.
Yeah.
I think defensively, it's a good matchup for the Seahawks. They've got a decent front. It's not great. This is not a run heavy team. That benefits the Seahawks. When you're kind of one dimensional, I like our chances. Tariq Woolen on that outside. I mean, he's proven himself to be one of the top 5 corners in this league already as a rookie.
God, that's so crazy to say out loud.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just
he's
so
a meteor.
unbelievable. It's unbelievable how good he's been so quickly. And he came from freaking UTSA. This isn't a guy that was a dominant player at Alabama. Right. He was at the University of Texas, San Antonio, and is a converted wide receiver who doesn't even know his position that well yet, because he's only been playing it for a year and a half.
He's literally played like 24 games at cornerback in all of his entire life.
And 6 of those have been in the NFL. Actually, no, 9 of them have been in the NFL.
He just doesn't know what he doesn't know, which is the special thing about the kid. I mean, it's just crazy.
Oh, God, he's just such a special talent.
So you add that factor. You add the Kobe Bryant factor, punching balls out and making plays. And Diggs hasn't had a great season, but I expect him to kind of rebound at some point in this. And maybe this tweaked defense gives him an opportunity to show better. He has been in a position to have a couple of picks himself and just hasn't come down with the ball. So I think those opportunities are there, especially with a guy that's going to throw 42 to 48 times a game in this game. There's going to be opportunities there to get the ball. So I see this as being a defining game in the Seahawks season, because if you lose this game, you've got a below 500 record. You've got some tough games coming up. But if you win this game, it really does solidify your position in the division in the NFC West, as well as propels you, I think, a little bit into a team that's got a legit playoff contender vibe to it. And
are the Chargers the best team Seattle will have played?
The best complete team by a hair. I'm still thinking the 49ers are probably the best team overall, but maybe not. Maybe this is the best team. I don't know.
So they might be they're either the best or the second best team that Seattle has faced overall.
Agreed.
And the 49ers, which are the other team that's in those, just ran over Seattle.
Yeah, well, that was in week 2. This is week 7.
I know.
These are different teams, different vibes, different confidence levels, and Seattle's in a way better place than it was in week 2. Now that granted, that week for one Broncos win was pretty decent, but that was more on just adrenaline, seemingly, and in a first half of performance, that was it.
And the Broncos have proven to not be a very good offense.
The Broncos have a great defense, though. I think they're probably the number 1 defense in the NFL. They've
got a really good defense. God, that offense is bad.
Yes, it is. It's horrible. It really is. If they had anything close to a decent offense, they'd probably, they'd be doing okay. But
Denver Broncos have in terms of points per game, the Denver Broncos are the worst offense in the NFL. The Bears are second, then the Steelers. I mean, it's the usual suspects. It's the guys you expect to be bad, right? Carolina.
Well, you'd expect Denver to be bad if it wasn't for Russell Wilson, but it's tough. I don't even know what to make of the whole thing. Yeah, for Russ personally, I hope it turns around for him, because I hate him having to go through such a trial, but it is what it is. But it helps our positioning for draft picks. Currently right now we have Denver's 7th overall pick in the first round. and we're picking like 14 or something like that.
And the Seahawks offense is 9th in the league in points per game.
And we've had a couple bad games, a couple bad halves.
There's been
bad game against the 49ers and a couple bad halves beyond that.
Yeah, there's been some bad football played by the offense, but there's also been a lot of points scored. So
and that Lions game helped a little bit.
Yeah, certainly.
All right. So my prediction is the Seahawks 27, the Chargers 23.
Ooh, picking a Seahawk win.
I'm picking a Seahawk win.
Nice.
It's one of those things where I just think it all kind of comes together, and we're at the end of this game, we're pinching ourselves of how good this team could potentially be. Because if they win, Keith, and they win kind of a solid outing here, I'll take any win. But if they win kind of in a solid fashion, the conversation around this team completely changes.
Oh my God, it becomes wait, is this team for real?
It sure does.
Because everyone was expecting the Seahawks to be awful, and looking at a 3, 4, 5 win team for over the course of the season, they're currently 3-3. And if they go out and beat a Charger team that is expected to, compete for their division, even if they don't win it, they get a playoff spot and have a shot, at pushing the, Kansas City, for a AFC title game kind of. I mean, that's how good the Chargers are expected to be, and they're 4-2. They look good so far. And if Seattle can go out and beat them on the road in LA, that's huge. That's a signature win. It would be a statement win.
That would validate A, Geno Smith, but B, Pete Carroll. That would be a Pete Carroll signature win.
Yep.
Because everyone counted him out. Everyone counted Geno out. And they've improved enough to beat a really solid team on the road at this juncture in the season. It would be just a statement generating. So we'll see. And that's kind of where I'm thinking. I'm hopeful. I'm not completely counting on it because anything can happen, but seems right. It seems like that's the right prediction. So,
all right. So before we go, I'm going to completely change gears, change the subject, and go back to the off season. And you and I both, because of the Senior Bowl and what we saw from him, you and I both liked a late round quarterback named Bailey Zappi.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about him that at the time they hadn't traded Russ yet. We're like, maybe this should be a target for Seattle as a player that they can develop and all of that. Did Bailey Zappi just replace Mac Jones?
Yeah, it's entirely possible. It's interesting, right?
That offense has been significantly better in New England with Bailey Zappi under center than Mac Jones. And I find that to be really interesting given all the conversations that you and I had in the offseason, thinking, this kid's better than people think. And he's definitely proving it now that he gets a chance to get on the field in the NFL.
Yeah. He's got 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 596 yards in 3 starts or 3 games played. He had 99 yards against the Packers, 188 yards against the Lions with one touchdown, 1 interception, but a completion percentage of 81%. Mm-hmm. And then in the Browns, he just really had a nice solid game. A quarterback rating of 118, 2 touchdowns, 309 yards, 70% completion percentage. And their offense looked like it was moving up and down the field. Yeah, but it's, and the Browns have a decent defense. So it's interesting. Don't.
So you look at the stats against the Lions and you're like, maybe, but it really, if you watch any of that game, it really feels like Bill Belichick's pulled everything back and they're just trying to make life easy on this rookie. And he pulled it back too far.
I would have to see.
He loosened the reins a little bit against the Browns, and Zappi stepped up and performed.
I think that you're going to have a larger sample size here.
Okay.
Obviously, they've seen Mac Jones and had Mac Jones in their building and for over a year and in practice and in games, and Bill Belichick's, can't argue with his success. So But it'd be interesting. I mean, it's been done before by the Patriots of generating some buzz around a backup quarterback, just to have a commodity. And so they've probably done that at this point with Bailey Zappi.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he's their future.
But I don't
know if Mac Jones is either.
Bill Belichick has always been a guy that is not afraid to move on from a player and trade a guy. He's the prototypical trade a guy a year early rather than a year late. And, Richard Seymour is a good example. Guys like that. He was ready to move on from Tom Brady 2 years earlier than Tom Brady left and roll with Jimmy Garoppolo.
And there's always a GM out there wanting to make amends for a player they missed. And will bite on something like that, even if it's an overpay.
Yeah. And
so
Mac Jones,
we'll see. If Mac Jones is a good quarterback,
if Mac Jones becomes available, honestly, if Mac Jones becomes available, you're going to get one of the quarterback needy teams that's going to look at him at his age, his rookie contract status and all that, is going to jump on that and take them out of the market for one of the draftable quarterbacks this year.
It's possible. It is possible, because when you take a look at the top of the draft, you've got Stroud and Young and Levis. Beyond that, though, those top three, those are the top three. And then after that, it drops off. You're going to have to go reach for a guy like Richardson. If you think you need to take Richardson in the middle of the first round to get him before somebody else does in the top of the second, a team that missed in the first in the first round, Richardson's a great prospect with physical tools like that you just don't see very often, but he's not ready. You're going to have to sit him behind somebody for a while. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting.
Cool.
All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NWC Hockey. You know where the show's at. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're listening to the show for the first time, so you get all our shows we do through a week. And if you like it, share it. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.